Today is December 18th. It's the 353rd day of the year, and this is the On This Day podcast. On this day in 1917, the United States Senate votes in favor of a resolution to amend the Constitution, banning the manufacture, sale, transportation of, and import or export of intoxicating liquors. With this vote, the 18th Amendment enacting the prohibition of alcohol is proposed to the states for ratification. The Senate passes its first resolution in August of 1917. The House of Representatives pass a revised resolution in December, which the Senate affirms with their vote on this day in 1917. Over the next year and a half, the states and their legislatures vote on the amendment, with 46 of the 48 states at the time voting in favor of the amendment. Only Connecticut and Rhode Island reject the amendment. When Nebraska votes in favor in January 1919, the 36th state to do so, the 18th Amendment is officially ratified, and prohibition is the law of the land. Temperance movements in some parts of the country have already led to the outlaw of alcohol in some states. Rural Protestants and social progressives lead the charge for prohibition. One of the major voices speaking out against prohibition is that of the German American, but German Americans are ignored wholesale in the country after America's declaration of war against Germany earlier in the year in April 1917. With the ratification of the 18th Amendment, prohibition goes into effect at the beginning of 1920, the start of the decade that becomes known as the Roaring Twenties. Consumption of alcohol is not illegal. Only the manufacture, sale, and transport of alcohol is illegal on the national level. In some state and local areas, possession of alcohol is illegal. I guess unless you're possessing it in your belly. Prohibition doesn't really stop anyone from drinking. It does reduce consumption. Alcohol consumption rates decrease by as much as half during the Prohibition era in comparison to pre-Prohibition years. But the other half still manages to get their hands on booze and knock a few back on a regular basis. A robust black market trade in alcohol fills the void of the previously legal saloons and liquor stores that have been forced to shut their doors. And it's all spearheaded by organized crime gangs who waste no time in meeting the demand for liquor. And all those sales are, of course, tax-free, because you can't collect tax from an illegal enterprise. And not only has the government lost a fair amount of tax revenue due to prohibition, they also now have the added cost of enforcement. The Volstead Act is passed establishing the rules of engagement for enforcement of the 18th Amendment. The Act defines specifically which intoxicating beverages are illegal and which are allowed in controlled increments, such as medicinal whiskey, which doctors are allowed to prescribe for their patients in limited amounts, or the amount of non-intoxicating ciders and fruit juices, that is, wines and beers with less than 0.5% alcohol, which can be made at home, 200 gallons each year, to be exact, or wines for religious ceremonies. But law enforcement not only has their hands full with all this new crime related to the transport and sale of liquor, crime rates in general go up. Thefts and burglaries, assaults and battery, homicides all increase during Prohibition. Police have their hands full, and the cost of policing goes up more than 10%. Gangsters such as Al Capone and bootleggers across the country amass great fortunes during Prohibition, and everyone knows where to find a speakeasy or cocktail party. Prohibition is popular at first. It takes a lot to ratify a constitutional amendment. So there's a lot of support in those first few years. But every year after it takes effect in 1920, support for prohibition wanes. No year more so than 1930, when the impact of the 1929 stock market crash really begins to be felt by all Americans. As the Great Depression deepens, everyone in the country is in need of a stiff drink. But more importantly, governments really feel the burden of the lost tax revenue in the height of the Great Depression. It takes a lot to ratify a constitutional amendment, but by 1933, the nation is fully in support of doing away with the prohibition on alcohol, which is taken care of with the ratification of the 21st Amendment, the repeal of the 18th Amendment, enacting Prohibition, that is first proposed by Congress to the states for ratification on this day in 1917. There are 13 days left in the year. On This Day is produced by me, Dave Schultz. Thank you very much for listening. Born on this day in 1946, quite possibly the most successful filmmaker of all time, Steven Spielberg. Born in Cincinnati, raised in Arizona, the indisputable king of Hollywood. Also born on this day in 1954, actor Ray Liotta. And who doesn't love Ray Liotta? So if you're still listening, Karen, talk to you tomorrow.